The lightning split the dark Nebraska sky, illuminating Zara Lockwood's terrified face as she struggled to control her panicked horse. One moment she had been riding across the prairie toward home, and the next, nature had unleashed its fury in a storm that came from nowhere. The dry summer grass ignited around her like kindling, flames leaping high as the wind whipped them into a growing inferno. Her mount reared, throwing her to the ground before bolting away, leaving her stranded in a rapidly closing circle of fire. Sam Landon spotted the blaze from 2 miles away. The tall cowboy had been tracking a stray from his herd when the storm rolled in. But what caught his eye wasn't the lightning, it was the unmistakable silhouette of a person trapped within the growing ring of flames. Without hesitation, he dug his spurs into his horse's flanks and rode hard toward the fire that was consuming the prairie grass with frightening speed. North Platte, Nebraska had seen its share of prairie fires in the summer of 1875, but none had threatened human life quite like this. As Sam approached, he could see it was a woman, her dark hair whipping wildly in the wind as she frantically searched for an escape route. The flames were already 4 feet high in places and growing by the second. "Hold on," he shouted, though he knew she couldn't hear him over the roaring fire and crashing thunder. Sam pulled his bandana up over his nose and mouth, tugged his hat down tight, and assessed the situation. There was a narrow section where the fire hadn't quite closed the circle. It was now or never. He spurred his horse forward, the loyal animal responding despite its fear. They charged through the gap just before it closed with flames. Inside the fire ring, Zara backed away from the advancing flames, her dress singed at the edges, tears streaming down her soot-stained face. When the cowboy burst through the wall of fire, she thought she was hallucinating from the smoke. "Take my hand," Sam called, extending his arm as he guided his horse alongside her. Zara didn't hesitate. She reached up, grasping his strong forearm as he hoisted her up behind him in one powerful motion. The horse danced nervously as the flames closed in. "Hold tight," Sam shouted, feeling her arms wrap desperately around his waist. He turned his horse toward the tallest flames, the only direction where the wind might give them an advantage. "Come on, Thunder," he urged his mount. The horse gathered its strength and leapt forward, charging directly at the wall of fire. Zara buried her face against Sam's back, certain they were riding to their deaths. The heat was unbearable as they crashed through the flames, the smell of singed hair and leather filling their nostrils. Then suddenly, they were through, galloping across the open prairie with the fire receding behind them. They didn't stop until they'd put a safe distance between themselves and the blaze. Only then did Sam rein in his horse and turn to look at the woman clinging to him. "You all right, miss?" he asked, his voice hoarse from the smoke. Zara nodded, still trembling. "You saved my life," she managed, meeting his gaze for the first time. Her eyes were the color of summer sage, wide and still frightened. "I'm Zara Lockwood." "Sam Landon," he replied with a tip of his hat. "Looks like we both picked a bad day for a ride." A crash of thunder reminded them the storm wasn't finished. Rain began to fall, a blessing that would help contain the fire they'd just escaped. "My father's ranch is just beyond that ridge," Zara said, pointing. "We can shelter there." Sam nodded and turned his horse in the direction she indicated. As they rode through the suddenly drenching rain, neither realized that their chance encounter in the midst of danger would change both their lives forever. The Lockwood Ranch came into view as they crested the hill, a substantial spread with a sturdy 2-story house, several outbuildings, and corrals holding prime stock. Even through the rain, Sam could tell this was one of the more prosperous ranches in the region. He'd heard of Winston Lockwood, a successful cattle baron who'd settled in North Platte years before the railroad came through, but their paths had never crossed. As they approached, men came running from the barn, alerted by the sight of a horse carrying 2 riders in the storm. "Miss Zara," called an older man with a gray mustache, rushing forward as Sam helped her down from the saddle. "We were about to send a search party. Are you hurt?" "I'm fine, Mr. Peterson," she assured the ranch foreman. "Thanks to Mr. Landon here, the lightning started a fire and trapped me. He rode through the flames to save me," the men murmured, eyeing Sam with newfound respect as they led them toward the house. A woman burst through the front door, presumably Mrs. Lockwood. Sam thought her face a picture of relief as she rushed to embrace her daughter. "Zara." "Oh, thank God," she cried, holding her daughter tight before examining her for injuries. "When we saw the fire from the house, I feared the worst." "Mother, this is Samuel Landon," Zara said, turning to introduce her rescuer. "He saved my life." Eleanor Lockwood turned to Sam with tears in her eyes. "Mr. Landon, I don't know how to thank you properly." "No need for thanks, madam," Sam replied, suddenly conscious of his smoke-stained clothes and the fact that he was dripping water onto their polished floor. "Anyone would have done the same." "Not anyone would ride through fire, young man," came a deep voice from the doorway. A tall, distinguished man with silver temples and a bearing that commanded respect stepped forward. "Winston Lockwood," he said, extending his hand. "You've done my family a service I can never repay." Sam shook his hand firmly. "Sam Landon, sir. I'm foreman at the Circle B just south of here." "Benson's Place." Winston nodded in recognition. "Good operation. You must stay the night, Mr. Landon. That storm isn't letting up, and I insist on providing you with a hot meal and dry clothes at the very least." Sam wanted to decline, feeling out of place in the grand house, but a glance at Zara changed his mind. There was something about her that made him want to know more, a strength he'd glimpsed when she was surrounded by fire, before fear had taken hold. "That's kind of you, sir. I accept." While Sam was shown to a guest room to clean up and change into borrowed clothes, Zara was fussed over by her mother and their housekeeper, Mrs. Wilkins. They drew her a hot bath and insisted she soak away the smoke and terror of her ordeal. As she bathed, Zara found her thoughts returning to the moment when Sam had appeared through the flames like some heroic figure from a dime novel. She'd never seen anyone act with such decisive courage. The cowboys who occasionally called at the ranch to see her were mostly full of bluster and talk, but Sam Landon had ridden straight into danger without hesitation. By the time she dressed for dinner in a simple blue dress, her hair still damp from the bath, Zara was eager to learn more about her rescuer. She found him in the dining room with her father, the 2 men already deep in conversation about cattle prices and the drought that had gripped parts of the territory that summer. Sam stood when she entered, and she was struck by how different he looked cleaned up. His sandy hair was still damp, curling slightly at the ends, and the borrowed clothes, though a bit short in the sleeves, gave him a more gentlemanly appearance than his range-worn gear. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, most clear, blue, and direct, crinkling slightly at the corners as he smiled at her. "Miss Lockwood," he greeted her. "You look much recovered." "As do you, Mr. Landon," she replied with a small smile. "Though I believe I preferred you covered in soot and smelling of smoke. It seemed more fitting for a hero." Her father cleared his throat, but she caught the amusement in his expression. Her mother entered then, and they all took their seats for dinner. Throughout the meal, Zara observed Sam carefully. He had good manners but wasn't overly polished, a working man who knew how to behave in proper company but didn't put on airs. He answered her parents' questions directly and asked thoughtful ones of his own. She learned he'd come to Nebraska 5 years earlier from Missouri, worked his way up from ranch hand to foreman, and hoped to have his own spread someday. He spoke with passion about breeding better stock and methods to survive the harsh winters. There was an intelligence behind his words that surprised her. He wasn't just a man of action but of thought as well. The railroads changed everything, her father was saying. North Platte's growing faster than anyone predicted. Land that was worthless 5 years ago is being snatched up now. That's why I'm saving every penny, Sam replied. Though at current prices, it might be another 5 years before I can buy enough acres to start a proper operation. Patience is a virtue in ranching, Winston nodded approvingly. Too many young men want everything at once and end up losing it all in the first bad winter. After dinner, while her parents retired to the parlor, Zara suggested showing Sam the library. It was her favorite room in the house, lined with books her father had shipped from back east. "You read all these?" Sam asked, scanning the shelves with genuine interest. "Most of them," she admitted. "When you grow up 20 miles from town, books become dear friends." He pulled down a volume of Thoreau and opened it carefully. "This was a favorite of my mother's. She taught school before she married my father." "And what did your father do?" Zara asked, curious about this man's background. A shadow passed over Sam's face. "He was a farmer. Lost everything in the war, then lost himself to drink afterward. My mother tried to hold things together, but—" He shrugged. "She died when I was 16 and I headed west soon after." Zara felt a surge of sympathy. "I'm sorry, it must have been difficult." "Life often is," he said simply, replacing the book, "but it's also full of unexpected beauty." His gaze met hers, and something passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits, despite their different circumstances. The moment was broken by Mrs. Wilkins announcing that Sam's clothes had been cleaned and dried. Shortly after, Zara found herself bidding him good night, strangely reluctant to see him go. "Will you be leaving at first light?" she asked. "With your father's permission, I thought I might help track down your horse tomorrow," Sam replied. "No doubt the poor creature is terrified and might have run quite a distance." "That's very kind," she said, pleased at the prospect of seeing him again. "Penny is a good horse but easily spooked." "Then I'll see you at breakfast," he said with a small bow. "Good night, Miss Lockwood." "Good night, Mr. Landon." As she climbed the stairs to her bedroom, Zara realized her hands had stopped trembling for the first time since the fire. Samuel Landon had brought a sense of calm and security that lingered even in his absence, and she found herself looking forward to morning with unexpected eagerness. The next day dawned clear and bright, washing away all evidence of the previous night's storm except for the blackened scar on the prairie where the fire had raged. After breakfast, Sam and 2 of the Lockwood ranch hands set out to search for Zara's missing mare. To Sam's surprise, Zara herself appeared on the porch dressed in riding clothes. "I'm coming with you," she announced, striding toward the stables. Sam exchanged glances with the ranch hands, who shrugged as if to say this wasn't unusual behavior for the boss's daughter. Winston Lockwood appeared in the doorway behind them. "My daughter knows this land as well as any of my men, Mr. Landon," he explained. "And that horse will come to her call when it might shy from strangers." Sam nodded. "Happy to have the help, sir." They rode out as a small party, following the likely path Zara's horse might have taken. As they traveled, Sam noticed how confidently Zara sat her mount, a sturdy bay gelding, and how knowledgeable she was about tracking. This wasn't a delicate flower who needed constant protection. She was prairie-raised and capable. "Your father mentioned you grew up here," Sam said as they rode side by side, the ranch hands spreading out to widen their search area. "Born and raised," Zara confirmed. Father came out here when there was nothing but wilderness and opportunity. Mother followed a year later, and I arrived soon after. I've seen North Platte grow from a handful of buildings to a proper town. You ever wish for city life? Many young ladies would find this existence isolating. She considered his question thoughtfully. I visited my aunt in St. Louis once. The noise, the crowds, the constant social obligations, it was exhausting. I missed the open sky. She glanced at him. What about you? Do you dream of more than Nebraska has to offer? I dream of what Nebraska can become, he replied. This territory's still finding itself. I want to be part of building something that lasts. They crested a rise, and Sam pointed to a cluster of cottonwoods along a creek bed about half a mile distant. If I were a frightened horse, that's where I'd head water and shelter. Zara nodded in agreement, and they adjusted their course. As they approached the trees, she let out a distinctive whistle. They waited, and a moment later were rewarded by an answering whinny. Penny. Zara called, relief evident in her voice. The mare emerged cautiously from the trees, her ears forward, recognizing her mistress but still nervous after her ordeal. Zara dismounted and approached slowly, speaking in soft, reassuring tones. The horse allowed her to take hold of the trailing reins, nickering softly as Zara stroked her neck. She seems unharmed, Sam observed, having dismounted to check the horse for injuries. A few scratches, but nothing serious. Thank goodness, Zara sighed. I was so worried about her. As she prepared to mount, Sam instinctively moved to help her, his hands spanning her waist as he lifted her into the saddle. The simple contact sent an unexpected warmth through both of them. Their eyes met briefly as his hands lingered a moment longer than necessary, and Zara felt a blush rising to her cheeks. Thank you, she murmured, gathering her reins. The ranch hands had caught up by then, and the group turned back toward the Lockwood ranch. As they rode, conversation turned to the fire and how quickly it had spread. We're lucky the rain came when it did, one of the hands commented. Could have lost half the county otherwise. The Indians used to set controlled burns, Sam said. Kept the fuel load down so when lightning did strike, it couldn't spread so far or fast. You know about Indian practices? Zara asked, intrigued. I worked alongside a Pawnee scout for the Army before coming to North Platte, Sam explained. Learned a lot about how they managed the land. There's wisdom there that many settlers ignore to their peril. By the time they returned to the ranch, it was nearly noon. Winston Lockwood invited Sam to stay for lunch, an invitation he accepted, though he explained he needed to return to the Circle B afterward. My boss will be wondering where I disappeared to, he said apologetically. I'll send word explaining the circumstances, Winston assured him. Bill Benson and I go back many years. He'll understand. Over lunch, the conversation turned to the upcoming North Platte Founders' Day celebration, a relatively new tradition that had grown each year as the town expanded. You'll be attending, I presume, Mr. Landon? Eleanor Lockwood inquired. I hadn't given it much thought, madam, Sam admitted. Usually I stay with the herd while others go to town for such events. Nonsense, Winston declared. After your heroism, you deserve some celebration. Besides, there's to be a dance this year. Plenty of young ladies would welcome a partner, I'm sure. He glanced meaningfully at his daughter, who suddenly became very interested in her plate. Father, Zara murmured, embarrassed by his transparent matchmaking. Sam hid his smile. Well, if duty allows, perhaps I will attend. After the meal, Sam prepared to depart. Winston insisted on sending him home with a fine bottle of whiskey as a token of appreciation, which Sam accepted graciously. As he mounted his horse, Zara approached with something in her hand. A small token of my gratitude, she said, offering him a book, the volume of Thoreau he had admired the previous night. Miss Lockwood, I couldn't possibly, please, she interrupted. It would please me to know it's being read and appreciated. Their fingers brushed as he accepted the gift, and again that curious warmth flared between them. Thank you, he said softly. I'll treasure it. Perhaps you might call again, she suggested, her voice carefully casual, when your duties permit. Father always enjoys discussing ranching matters and… She hesitated, then added, I would enjoy continuing our conversation about books. Sam smiled, tipping his hat. I'd like that very much, Miss Lockwood. As he rode away, Sam was conscious of Zara watching from the yard, her figure growing smaller with distance but remaining fixed in his mind. He'd met many women since coming to Nebraska territory, but none had affected him quite like Zara Lockwood, intelligent, capable, and beautiful in a natural way that had nothing to do with fancy dresses or practiced charm. The book was a weight against his chest where he'd tucked it inside his jacket. A connection to her, and perhaps a beginning of something neither of them had anticipated before a lightning strike, and a prairie fire had brought them together. The 2 weeks following their dramatic meeting passed slowly for Zara. She found herself watching the road more often than usual, hoping to see a familiar rider approaching. Her father noticed her distraction and teased her gently about it. I reckon young Landon has made quite an impression, he remarked one evening as they sat on the porch. He saved my life, father, Zara replied, trying to sound matter of fact. Naturally, I think of him with gratitude. Winston chuckled. Is that what they're calling it these days, gratitude? Zara felt her cheeks warm. He's different from the other men around here. He thinks about things, has plans beyond Saturday night revelry in town. I noticed that myself, her father agreed, more serious now. Not many young men would discuss irrigation techniques and breeding stock with such knowledge. He'll make something of himself, given time. If opportunity permits, Zara said, voicing a concern that had been growing in her mind. Land prices were rising steadily as more settlers arrived by train. Men like her father, who had claimed vast acreages in the early days, were now the exception. Newcomers faced a much steeper climb to prosperity. Opportunity often needs a helping hand, Winston replied cryptically, puffing on his pipe. Before Zara could question him further, her mother called them in for dinner. The conversation shifted to other matters, but Zara couldn't help wondering what her father might have meant. The answer came 3 days later, when Winston announced at breakfast that he'd invited Bill Benson and his foreman to dinner the following evening to discuss business. Alina immediately began planning an elaborate meal, while Zara tried to contain her excitement at seeing Sam again. When the appointed evening arrived, Zara took more care than usual with her appearance, selecting a dress of soft green that complemented her eyes and arranging her dark hair in a style that softened her features. Her mother noticed, but made no comment beyond a knowing smile. The Benson party arrived promptly at 6. Bill Benson was a hardy man in his 60s, widowed for many years and devoted entirely to his ranch. He greeted the Lockwoods warmly, having been neighbors and occasional business partners for over a decade. Behind him stood Sam, dressed in his best clothes, his hat in his hands. His eyes found Zara immediately, lighting up with pleasure at the sight of her. Miss Lockwood, he greeted her with a slight bow. You're looking well. As are you, Mr. Landon, she replied, noticing how the lamplight caught the golden highlights in his hair. Dinner was a lively affair, with the men discussing cattle business and the women contributing occasionally to the conversation. Zara observed how respectfully Bill Benson treated Sam, deferring to his expertise on several matters and speaking of him with obvious pride. This young man's doubled my calving rate with his new methods, Benson told Winston. Could have retired years ago if I'd had him from the start. After the meal, Winston suggested the men retire to his study for brandy and business talk. Zara was surprised when her father invited her to join them instead of remaining with her mother for the usual after-dinner tea. "My daughter has a keen mind for business," Winston explained to their guests. "She keeps our ledgers and helps manage the ranch affairs." Bill Benson looked surprised but not disapproving, while Sam simply nodded as if this confirmed something he'd already suspected about Zara. In the study, Winston came directly to the point of the meeting. "Bill, you mentioned last month you're considering selling the north section of your property, the parcel that borders my east range." "Been thinking about it," Benson confirmed. "Getting too old to manage so much land, and that section's always been troublesome. Water access is poor, and it's too far from the main buildings for efficient operation." "I'd like to purchase it," Winston said, "but not for myself." He turned to Sam. "Mr. Landon, what would you say to running your own operation on that land?" Sam stared at him in astonishment. "Sir, I'm proposing a business arrangement," Winston continued. "I'll purchase the land from Bill, and you'll manage it as your own ranch, with an agreement to sell me your calves at a fair market rate for the first 5 years. During that time, you can buy the land from me in installments as your operation grows. By the end of 5 years, it's yours free and clear." The room fell silent as Sam absorbed this unexpected offer. Zara watched him carefully, seeing the conflicting emotions play across his face: hope, suspicion, pride. "That's extraordinarily generous, Mr. Lockwood," he finally said. "May I ask why you'd make such an offer to someone you barely know?" Winston leaned back in his chair. "3 reasons. First, Bill here speaks highly of your abilities and I trust his judgment. Second, I prefer having a competent neighbor rather than some greenhorn from back east who'll overgraze the land and drain the water table. And third," he glanced at his daughter, "I believe in investing in the future of this territory." Zara felt her heart quicken at the implication in her father's words and the way his gaze had shifted to her. He was offering Sam not just land but a future that might include her, if things progressed between them. "It's a fair offer, son," Bill Benson added. "Better than fair. I'd have made something similar myself if I had the capital." Sam looked at each of them in turn, his expression thoughtful. When his eyes met Zara's, something passed between them, a question, perhaps, or a promise. "I'd need time to consider the details," he said carefully. "It's not a decision to make hastily." "Of course," Winston nodded. "The offer stands. Discuss it with Bill, think it through, and let me know your decision when you're ready." The conversation turned to the practicalities: the exact boundaries of the land, the water rights, the number of cattle it might support. Throughout the discussion, Zara contributed knowledgeably, demonstrating her understanding of ranching operations. She caught Sam watching her with admiration several times, which sent a pleasant warmth through her. When the business talk concluded, Winston suggested they rejoin Alina in the parlor. As they filed out of the study, Sam hung back slightly, falling into step beside Zara. "Your father is a remarkable man," he said quietly. "Yes, he is," she agreed. "Though his offer didn't entirely surprise me. He's been speaking of you quite favorably since we met." "And what about you, Miss Lockwood?" Sam asked, his voice dropping even lower. "Do you think his offer has merit?" She met his gaze directly. "I think it would be beneficial to all parties involved, Mr. Landon." "All parties," he echoed, his eyes searching hers. "The closer neighbors are, the more frequently they tend to interact," she replied with a small smile. "For mutual assistance and social purposes." A slow smile spread across Sam's face. "I've been finding excuses to ride past your ranch twice already this week, hoping to catch sight of you. Being neighbors would certainly simplify matters." Before she could respond, they reached the parlor, where Alina was entertaining Bill Benson with stories of her latest letter from her sister back east. The intimate moment between Sam and Zara passed, but the understanding lingered. Later, as the Benson party prepared to depart, Sam found a moment alone with Zara near the front door. "I've been reading the Thoreau," he told her. "His thoughts on self-reliance particularly resonated with me." "I thought they might," she replied. "Have you reached the passage about building one's own house yet?" "Just last night," he said with a smile. "Quite timely, considering your father's offer. Literature often has a way of speaking to our present circumstances," Zara observed. "Will you be at the Founders' Day celebration?" "It's this Saturday." "I had planned to attend," Sam confirmed. "Even more so now, perhaps you might save a dance for me." "I might save more than one, Mr. Landon." Their conversation was interrupted by Bill Benson calling for Sam. With a tip of his hat and a lingering look, Sam joined his employer and departed into the night. Zara stood at the door watching until their lantern light disappeared down the road. Her father appeared beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "He's a good man," Winston said quietly. "Reminds me of myself at that age, determined, intelligent, not afraid of hard work." "Is that why you made him the offer?" Zara asked. Winston smiled knowingly. "Partly, but mostly because I've never seen my daughter watch the road for anyone else's coming." Zara leaned her head against her father's shoulder, grateful for his understanding and support. "Thank you, Father." "For what?" "Good business is good business," he replied with feigned innocence. "The fact that it might bring happiness to my daughter is merely a fortunate coincidence." The North Platte Founders' Day celebration transformed the small but growing town. Bunting and flags decorated the main street, and farmers and ranchers from miles around converged on the settlement. There were contests of skill, food stalls, games for children, and in the evening, a dance in the newly constructed town hall. The Lockwood family arrived in their wagon mid-morning. Winston immediately fell into conversation with other prominent citizens, while Alina joined the committee of ladies overseeing the food arrangements. Zara found herself momentarily at loose ends, scanning the crowd for a familiar tall figure, looking for someone in particular. Came a teasing voice behind her. Zara turned to find her friend Abigail Carter smiling knowingly at her. Abigail was the doctor's daughter and one of the few young women near Zara's age in the area. "Is it that obvious?" Zara asked ruefully. "Only to someone who's known you since you were 10, Abigail replied. "So this is the famous cowboy who rode through fire. Half the town's talking about it." "News travels fast," Zara sighed. "In North Platte, faster than the telegraph," Abigail laughed. "He must be something special to catch your interest. You've turned down every eligible man within 50 miles for years." "He's different," Zara said, unsure how to explain the connection she felt with Sam. "Well, you can tell me all about different over there," Abigail said, linking her arm through Zara's and steering her toward the refreshment tables. "I want every detail." For the next hour, Zara found herself relating the story of the fire and her rescue, followed by Sam's subsequent visits to the ranch. Abigail listened with rapt attention, occasionally interjecting with questions or comments. "Your father offered him land," she exclaimed when Zara reached that part of the story. "Winston Lockwood must approve indeed. He's practically handed the man a dowry." "Abigail," Zara protested, glancing around to ensure no one had overheard. "It's a business arrangement, nothing more." "Of course it is," Abigail replied skeptically. "Just like that new dress you're wearing is nothing special." Zara smoothed the skirt of her blue dress self-consciously. She had indeed taken extra care with her appearance that day, selecting her newest and most flattering gown. "Speaking of your cowboy," Abigail murmured, nodding toward the street, "I believe he's just arrived." Zara looked up to see Sam dismounting from his horse at the edge of town. He was dressed in clean clothes, his hair neatly combed, though nothing could disguise his cowboy bearing. Several people greeted him, and Zara noticed more than a few young women casting appreciative glances his way. "You'd better stake your claim before Mary Wilson does," Abigail whispered. "She's been trying to secure a husband since she turned 16. As if on cue, Mary Wilson, a pretty blonde with a determined expression, intercepted Sam, engaging him in conversation. Zara felt an unexpected stab of jealousy watching the other woman smile up at Sam, twirling her parasol coquettishly. "Go on," Abigail nudged her. "I've never known you to back down from a challenge." Taking a deep breath, Zara made her way through the crowd toward Sam. He spotted her approach, and the way his face lit up with genuine pleasure gave her a surge of confidence. Mary Wilson noticed the change in his expression and turned to see what had captured his attention. "Miss Lockwood," Sam greeted her warmly, tipping his hat. "You look lovely today." "Thank you, Mr. Landon," Zara replied. "I'm glad you were able to attend." Mary Wilson looked between them with barely concealed annoyance. "You two are acquainted. Mr. Landon saved my life during the lightning fire last month," Zara explained, not without a hint of satisfaction. "How?" "Dramatic," Mary said, her smile tight. "Well, I should find my father." "He was asking after you earlier, Zara. Something about cattle prices." With a final calculated smile at Sam, she departed. "I think I interrupted your conversation," Zara said, not sounding particularly apologetic. Sam's mouth quirked in amusement. "Not at all. Miss Wilson was kindly informing me about all the eligible young ladies in attendance today." "Was she indeed?" Zara raised an eyebrow. "And did she include herself in this helpful list?" "She may have mentioned her own numerous qualities," Sam chuckled. "But I found myself distracted by thoughts of another lady entirely." The warmth in his gaze made Zara's heart skip. Before she could respond, they were interrupted by the mayor announcing the start of the horseshoe competition. Sam was expected to participate, having developed quite a reputation at the Circle B for his skill. "Will you watch?" he asked Zara. "I wouldn't miss it," she assured him. The competition drew a large crowd. Sam performed admirably, advancing through several rounds against increasingly skilled opponents. Zara found herself cheering alongside others when he made particularly impressive throws. In the final round, he faced the blacksmith, a burly man with powerful arms who had won the previous 3 years. The contest was close, with both men demonstrating exceptional accuracy. In the end, Sam prevailed by a single point, accepting the small trophy and prize money with modest grace. As the crowd dispersed to other activities, he made his way back to Zara. "Congratulations," she said, genuinely impressed. "Where did you learn to throw like that?" "My father may have had his faults, but he was a champion horseshoe player," Sam explained. "Taught me when I was barely big enough to lift the shoe. It's one of the few good memories I have of him." The personal revelation touched Zara. Sam rarely spoke of his past, and each small disclosure felt like a gift of trust. They spent the remainder of the afternoon together, moving from one activity to another, sampling food from the various stalls and talking continuously. Sam proved to be both knowledgeable and curious about a wide range of subjects, from the latest farming techniques to literature and even politics. Zara found herself laughing more than she had in months, and several times caught her parents watching them with approving smiles. As evening approached, the focus of the celebration shifted to the town hall, where musicians were setting up for the dance. Lanterns were lit, casting a warm glow over the proceedings as people began to gather. "I believe you promised me more than one dance, Miss Lockwood," Sam reminded her as they walked toward the hall. "Did I? How forward of me," she teased, but her expression grew more serious as she added, "I've been considering my father's offer to you." "As have I," Sam replied. "Almost constantly, in fact. And your thoughts?" He guided her to a quieter spot near the edge of the gathering. "It's an incredible opportunity, one I never expected to have for many years yet. Part of me worries it's too much, too soon, that I haven't earned it." "My father doesn't make offers based on sentiment," Zara said firmly. "He's a businessman first. If he's proposing this arrangement, it's because he believes you're capable." "And what do you believe, Zara?" Sam asked, using her first name for the first time. The simple intimacy of it made her breath catch. "I believe that some opportunities come only once in a lifetime, and that recognizing them for what they are is its own form of wisdom." Sam studied her face in the lantern light, seeming to search for something beyond her words. Whatever he saw must have satisfied him, because he nodded slowly. "I told your father yesterday that I accept his offer," he said quietly. "We're to sign the papers next week." Joy bubbled up inside Zara, though she tried to maintain her composure. "That's wonderful news. For the territory's future, of course." A smile played at the corners of Sam's mouth. "Of course, though I wonder if you might permit me to hope it might have some bearing on my personal future as well." Before Zara could respond, the band struck up the first tune, and people began filing into the town hall. "I believe they're playing our song, Miss Lockwood," Sam said, offering his arm. "Shall we?" The dance floor was crowded with couples of all ages. Sam proved to be a competent, if not especially graceful dancer, guiding Zara through the patterns with careful attention. What he lacked in polish, he made up for in attentiveness, never taking his eyes from hers. "I should warn you," Zara said as they circled each other, "that if you're to be our neighbor, you'll be expected at all the local social events. My mother's quite insistent on maintaining civilization out here." "A hardship I'll endure with fortitude," Sam replied solemnly, though his eyes sparkled with humor. "Especially if it means more opportunities to dance with you." The evening progressed through various dances, reels, waltzes, and square dances that had everyone laughing and clapping. True to her word, Zara danced with Sam more than was strictly proper, earning knowing looks from Abigail and raised eyebrows from some of the town matrons. During a break in the music, Sam fetched them cups of punch and led Zara to a relatively quiet corner. "There's something I've been wanting to ask you," he said, suddenly serious. Zara's heart quickened. "Yes. Would you consider," he began, but was interrupted by Bill Benson appearing at his elbow. "Sorry to interrupt, young folks," the older man said, though he didn't look particularly sorry. "But there's a situation with one of our horses, Sam. Need your expertise." Sam looked torn between duty and desire to continue his conversation with Zara. "I'll be right back," he promised her. "This won't take long." Zara nodded, watching as he followed his boss outside. She sipped her punch, wondering what he had been about to ask her. The speculation kept her occupied until a commotion at the door drew everyone's attention. A man burst into the hall, his expression urgent. "Fire!" he shouted. "Fire at the livery stable!" The celebration dissolved into chaos as people rushed outside. In the darkness, the orange glow of flames was clearly visible at the edge of town where the livery stable stood. Men began organizing themselves, forming a bucket line from the nearest well, while women gathered children and moved to safety. Zara searched frantically for Sam in the crowd, finally spotting him near the burning building, helping to lead frightened horses to safety. The dry wood of the stable was burning fiercely, and sparks were flying dangerously close to neighboring structures. Her father appeared beside her. "Get your mother and go to the wagon," he instructed. "This could spread quickly." "I want to help," Zara protested. "You can help by keeping clear," Winston said firmly. "Too many people will only add to the confusion." Reluctantly, Zara found her mother and they made their way to the family wagon, which was parked at the far end of town. From there, they had a clear view of the firefighting efforts. The men of North Platte worked tirelessly, passing buckets and using wet blankets to beat out sparks that threatened to ignite other buildings. Sam was everywhere, leading horses from the adjacent corral to safety, helping organize the bucket line, climbing to a neighboring roof to wet it down against flying embers. Zara watched him with a mixture of pride and fear, remembering all too vividly the terrifying power of fire. After what seemed like hours but was perhaps only 45 minutes, the worst of the blaze was contained. The livery stable itself was a total loss, but they had managed to save all the horses and prevent the fire from spreading to other buildings. Exhausted men began to disperse, returning to their families. Zara spotted Sam walking toward their wagon, his face and clothes blackened with soot, his expression weary but satisfied. The sight of him, whole and safe after once again facing fire, filled her with such profound relief that she found herself running to meet him. Without thinking about propriety or the fact that half the town might be watching, Zara threw her arms around him, hugging him tightly. After a moment of surprise, Sam's arms encircled her, holding her close. "Are you all right?" she asked, drawing back to look at his face. "Just dirty and tired," he assured her, his eyes searching hers. "Were you worried about me?" "Of course I was," she admitted. "You seem to make a habit of charging into burning buildings." Sam smiled, reaching up to brush a smudge of soot from her cheek where it had transferred from his shirt. "Only when something precious needs saving." The tenderness in his voice and the gentle touch of his fingers against her skin made Zara forget they were standing in the middle of the street with potential onlookers. All she could see was Sam, brave, intelligent, kind Sam, looking at her as if she were the most important person in the world. "You never finished asking your question," she reminded him softly. Before the fire, Sam took a deep breath, seemingly gathering his courage. "I was going to ask if you would consider calling on you properly, with your father's permission, of course." "Calling on me? As a suitor, you mean?" "Yes," he confirmed, watching her face carefully. "I know it's forward of me. We've known each other barely a month, and I'm only just establishing myself. Your family is prominent in the territory," while Zara placed her fingers gently against his lips, stopping his words. "Yes, yes," he repeated, looking stunned. "Yes, you may call on me," she clarified, smiling. "Though I suspect my father has been expecting it since he offered you the land." Sam's face broke into a radiant smile that transformed his tired features. "I promise I'll work harder than any man alive to be worthy of the opportunity. Both the land and the privilege of courting you." "I have no doubt of it," Zara replied, suddenly aware that they were indeed drawing attention from passers-by. She stepped back slightly, though her eyes remained locked with his. "Perhaps you should speak with my father. He and mother are by the wagon." Sam nodded, suddenly looking nervous despite having just helped save half the town from burning down. "Right now, looking like this." He gestured to his soot-covered clothes. "I think he'll appreciate your honesty more than your appearance," Zara assured him. "Besides, after tonight's heroics, I doubt he'll deny you anything." Together, they walked back to where the Lockwoods waited by their wagon. Winston's expression was knowing as they approached, while Alina looked between them with poorly concealed delight. "Mr. Lockwood," Sam began formally, I wonder if I might have a word with you in private." Winston nodded, stepping a short distance away with Sam. Though Zara couldn't hear their conversation, she could see her father's serious expression gradually soften into approval. The men shook hands, and when they returned, Winston was actually smiling. "Well, it seems our new neighbor will be a frequent visitor at the ranch," he announced. "Eleanor, I believe we should expect Mr. Landon for Sunday dinner this week." "He will always be welcome," Eleanor replied warmly, "though perhaps in slightly cleaner attire." Sam laughed, looking both embarrassed and elated. "Yes, madam, I'll be sure to look my best." As the Lockwoods prepared to depart for their ranch, Sam helped Zara into the wagon. Their hands lingered together a moment longer than necessary. "Sunday seems very far away," he said quietly. "The ranch is only an hour's ride from the Circle B," she reminded him with a smile. "And soon you'll be even closer." "Not close enough," he murmured, but stepped back as Winston took up the reins. As the wagon pulled away, Zara looked back at Sam standing in the street, still watching her. Despite the ruined celebration, the blackened building behind him, and the lingering smell of smoke in the air, she couldn't remember ever feeling quite so happy. The weeks following the Founders' Day celebration were filled with activity. The paperwork for Sam's land purchase was completed, and he began the process of establishing his own small ranch. He named it the Thunderbolt, in remembrance of the lightning that had indirectly brought him and Zara together. The land Winston had arranged for him to buy was rough, but promising 800 acres with a small creek running through the eastern section and good grazing land throughout. There was no house, only a dilapidated line shack that had been used occasionally by cowboys watching the distant herds. Sam's first priority was building proper shelter before winter set in. With help from friends from the Circle B and occasional assistance from the Lockwood ranch hands, he began constructing a modest but solid cabin. Zara rode out frequently to observe the progress, bringing food and encouragement. "It's small," Sam apologized one September afternoon as they stood surveying the partially completed structure. "It's a beginning," Zara corrected him. "Rome wasn't built in a day, nor was the Lockwood Ranch." Sam smiled at her practical outlook. "Your father offered to lend me more men to speed things along. Will you accept?" He shook his head. "I want to build this myself as much as possible. It matters to me that it's my own work." Zara understood his pride, even as she worried about the approaching winter. Nebraska's weather could turn brutal with little warning, and the thought of Sam alone in an unfinished cabin during a blizzard troubled her. Their courtship progressed steadily through the autumn months. Sam joined the Lockwoods for Sunday dinners without fail, regardless of his workload. Sometimes he would arrive exhausted, having worked from dawn until just before riding over, but he never missed an opportunity to spend time with Zara. For her part, Zara found herself thinking about Sam constantly. She took to riding out to the Thunderbolt several times a week, ostensibly to bring supplies or messages from her father, but really just to see Sam, to watch him work, to talk with him about his plans, to simply be in his presence. By late October, the cabin was nearly complete, with only interior finishing work remaining. Sam had also built a small but sturdy barn and corral. Bill Benson, true to his word as a friend of the Lockwoods, had allowed Sam to take a small herd 20 head of cattle as part of his final payment for years of service. It wasn't much to start a ranch, but it was a foundation. On a crisp November morning, Zara rode out to the Thunderbolt with a basket of food prepared by Mrs. Wilkins. She found Sam splitting firewood, his shirt sleeves rolled up despite the chill in the air. He smiled broadly when he saw her approach, setting down his axe and coming to help her dismount. "This is a pleasant surprise," he said, taking the basket from her. "I wasn't expecting to see you until Sunday. Mother sent provisions," Zara explained. "She worries you're not eating properly now that you're living out here alone." "Your mother's concern is much appreciated," Sam said, guiding her toward the cabin. "Come inside and see the progress. I finished the stove installation yesterday." The interior of the cabin was simple but well crafted. A stone fireplace dominated one wall with a small iron cooking stove nearby. There was a sturdy table with 2 chairs, a bookshelf already containing several volumes including the Thoreau she had given him, and a bed in the corner covered with warm blankets. Everything was clean and arranged with care. "It's wonderful, Sam," Zara said sincerely. "You've created a real home here." "It's missing something important," he replied, watching her face. "What's that, you?" The simple declaration hung in the air between them. They had spoken of feelings, of futures, of possibilities, but never so directly. "Sam," she began, but he took her hands in his expression earnest. "I know it's too soon by most standards," he said quickly. "We've known each other barely 3 months, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life, Zara. I love you. I think I've loved you since you stood in that ring of fire, refusing to give in to fear." Zara's heart felt as if it might burst from her chest. "I love you too," she whispered. "I think I knew it when I saw you ride through those flames without hesitation." Sam's smile was radiant. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object, a simple gold ring with a single small diamond. "It was my mother's," he explained. "The only thing of value I brought with me when I left Missouri." Zara stared at the ring, then at Sam's face, realization dawning. "Are you asking you to marry me?" "Yes." He took a deep breath. "Zara Lockwood, would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? I can't offer you luxury or ease, at least not yet. But I can promise to love you every day of my life, to work tirelessly to build something worthy of you, and to never take for granted the miracle of having you by my side." Tears filled Zara's eyes, but they were tears of joy. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you, Samuel Landon." Sam slipped the ring onto her finger, then drew her into his arms, kissing her with all the passion that had been building between them since that first dramatic meeting. Zara responded in kind, her arms winding around his neck, her heart singing with happiness. When they finally parted, both breathless, Sam rested his forehead against hers. "Your father might have something to say about this," he murmured. Zara laughed softly. "I suspect he's been expecting it. He didn't offer you land adjacent to ours just for business reasons. Even so, I should speak with him formally. We'll ride back together," Zara decided. "No time like the present." The journey to the Lockwood Ranch was filled with plans and dreams. They discussed when they might marry. Spring seemed most practical after the worst of winter, but before the demanding summer work began. Where they would live. The cabin would suffice for now, though Sam had already designed an expansion in his mind, and how they would build their future together. Winston and Alina were surprised to see them arrive together in the middle of the afternoon, but one look at their faces and the ring on Zara's finger told the story. "I see congratulations are in order," Winston said, his eyes twinkling. Sam stepped forward formally. "Mr. Lockwood, I've asked your daughter to marry me, and she has done me the great honor of accepting. I respectfully request your blessing." Winston looked between them, his expression softening. "Do you love him, Zara?" "With all my heart, father," she replied without hesitation. "And you, young man? Do you love my daughter enough to put her happiness above all else?" "I do, sir," Sam answered solemnly. "She is the light of my life, and I will spend every day striving to be worthy of her." Winston nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Then you have my blessing and my welcome to the family." He extended his hand to Sam, who shook it gratefully. Alina was already embracing Zara, tears of joy in her eyes. "I've hoped for this since the day he brought you home from that fire," she admitted. "There was something in the way he looked at you even then." Plans for the wedding began immediately. Alina insisted on writing to relatives back east, though she acknowledged that few would make the journey to Nebraska territory for a spring wedding. Winston began discussions with Sam about expanding his herd as a wedding gift, while Zara found herself suddenly the center of attention among the women of North Platte when news of the engagement spread. The winter of 1875-76 proved to be one of the harshest in memory. Heavy snows began in early December and continued with little respite through January and February. Travel between ranches became difficult and sometimes dangerous, but Sam made the journey to the Lockwood Ranch whenever weather permitted, sometimes staying for days when storms made return impossible. During these extended visits, Sam and Winston spent long hours discussing ranching techniques and future plans. The older man had become a mentor to Sam, freely sharing the knowledge gained through decades of experience. For his part, Sam brought fresh ideas and energy that reinvigorated Winston's approach to his own operation. Zara watched their relationship develop with satisfaction, seeing how her father had come to view Sam as the son he'd never had. Simultaneously, she and Alina worked on preparations for the spring wedding and her eventual move to the Thunderbolt. "You'll need proper linens," Alina insisted one snowy afternoon as they sorted through a trunk of household goods. "And dishes you can't eat from tin plates forever." "I don't mind starting simply, Mother," Zara replied. "We'll acquire things as we go along." Alina shook her head fondly. "You always were practical to a fault, but a new marriage deserves some special touches." She pulled out a carefully wrapped bundle. "These were my grandmother's," she said, unwrapping a set of delicate china cups. "I've been saving them for your home one day." Touched by the gesture, Zara hugged her mother tightly. "They're beautiful. We'll use them for special occasions." By March, the worst of winter had passed, and preparations for the wedding accelerated. The ceremony was set for the first Saturday in April, to be held in the small church in North Platte, with a celebration afterward at the Lockwood Ranch. The entire county was invited. Such gatherings were rare enough to be community events in the sparsely populated territory. As the big day approached, Sam worked frantically to complete the additions to the cabin he'd been building whenever weather permitted throughout the winter. He'd added a proper bedroom and expanded the main living area, determined that Zara would come to a home worthy of her. The wedding day dawned clear and mild, as if nature herself approved of the union. Zara dressed in her mother's wedding gown, carefully altered by Mrs. Wilkins to fit her slender frame. Alina wove spring flowers into her dark hair instead of a veil, and Winston presented her with a locket that had belonged to his own mother. "You look beautiful, daughter," he said, his voice thick with emotion as they prepared to leave for the church. "Your mother and I couldn't be prouder of the woman you've become." "Thank you, Father," Zara replied, kissing his cheek, "for everything, including recognizing what a good man Sam is before I fully realized it myself." Winston chuckled. "A father sees these things. Now shall we go? I believe there's a nervous young rancher waiting for his bride." The small church was filled to capacity with friends, neighbors, and curiosity seekers from across the county. As Zara walked down the aisle on her father's arm, her eyes found Sam standing tall and handsome at the altar, watching her with such love that it took her breath away. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising to support each other through whatever challenges life might bring, to build their ranch and their family with love and determination, and to remember always the precious gift they had found in each other. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Sam's kiss was tender yet passionate, a promise of the life they would share. The congregation erupted in cheers and applause as they turned to face their community for the first time as Mr. and Mrs. Landon. The celebration at the Lockwood Ranch lasted well into the evening. There was abundant food, music for dancing, and more than a few emotional toasts to the newlyweds. As darkness fell, lanterns were lit around the yard, creating a magical atmosphere as friends and neighbors continued the festivities. Eventually, it was time for the couple to depart for their new home. They said their goodbyes amid good-natured teasing and heartfelt well-wishes, then climbed into the wagon Sam had decorated specially for the occasion. "Are you ready, Mrs. Landon?" he asked as he took up the reins. "I've been ready since the day you rode through fire to find me," Zara replied, leaning against his shoulder as they set off toward their future together. Their life together began in earnest the next morning. Zara woke at dawn, as was her habit, and found Sam already up and tending to the morning chores. She dressed quickly and joined him outside, where he was feeding the small herd of cattle that represented the beginning of their ranching operation. "Good morning, wife," he greeted her with a smile that made her heart skip. "Good morning, husband," she replied, still marveling at how natural the word felt. "What can I do to help?" Together, they established a routine that would serve them well in the years to come, sharing the work of the ranch according to their strengths and abilities, making decisions as partners, and ending each day in each other's arms, grateful for the love they had found. Spring turned to summer, and the Thunderbolt Ranch began to flourish under their care. Sam's innovative breeding program, combined with Winston's gift of additional cattle, resulted in a growing herd of superior stock. Zara's knowledge of bookkeeping and business matters ensured they managed their resources wisely, reinvesting profits into improvements for the ranch. By their first anniversary, they had reason for additional celebration. Zara was expecting their first child. The news brought joy not only to them but to the elder Lockwoods, who rode over immediately upon receiving the news. "A grandchild," Alina exclaimed, embracing Zara. "Nothing could make us happier." "The Thunderbolt's future secured," Winston nodded approvingly. "Good work, both of you." On a warm September day in 1877, Zara gave birth to a healthy boy they named William Winston Landon. Sam paced outside the bedroom while Mrs. Wilkins, who had come from the Lockwood Ranch to assist with the birth, helped deliver the child. When finally allowed inside, he approached the bed with reverence, gazing in wonder at his wife and newborn son. "He's perfect," Sam whispered, carefully taking the tiny bundle Zara offered. "Look what we created together." "He has your eyes," Zara observed, exhausted but radiant with happiness. "And hopefully your wisdom," Sam replied, sitting beside her on the bed. "I've never loved you more than I do right now, Zara Landon." The Thunderbolt continued to grow along with their family. By 1880, they had expanded to over 2,000 acres, absorbing adjacent properties as neighbors decided to move on or retire. Their herd numbered in the hundreds, with a reputation for quality that brought buyers from as far as Chicago. That same year, they welcomed a daughter, Alina Rose, completing their family. The children grew up in the freedom of ranch life, learning the value of hard work, the importance of family, and the rewards of perseverance. North Platte itself was growing too, becoming an important stop on the Union Pacific Railroad and attracting new settlers continuously. The Landons watched the transformation of the territory with a mixture of acceptance and nostalgia for the wilder days they had known. In 1883, tragedy struck when Winston Lockwood passed away suddenly from a heart ailment. Eleanor moved into the Landon home afterward, unwilling to remain alone at the ranch that held so many memories. Her presence was a blessing, especially with the children, allowing Zara more freedom to work alongside Sam in managing their expanding operations. By 1890, the Thunderbolt had become one of the most respected ranches in Nebraska, known for innovation and quality. Sam served on the Territorial Livestock Board, while Zara helped establish North Platte's first proper library, donating many books from their own growing collection. Their 15th wedding anniversary was marked with a celebration that brought together friends and family from across the state. As they stood together greeting guests, Sam leaned close to Zara's ear. "You ever wonder what might have happened if that lightning hadn't started the fire that day?" he asked. "If our paths had never crossed?" Zara turned to look at him, at the face she had loved through 15 years of joys and hardships. There were lines now where there had been none before, and strands of silver in his sandy hair, but his eyes were the same clear blue and filled with the same love she'd seen when he pulled her from the flames. "I think we would have found each other anyway," she said with certainty. "Some things are simply meant to be." Sam smiled, squeezing her hand. "You know, I think you're right. But I'm grateful for that lightning all the same. It brought me to you a little faster." As they looked out over their home, their children, and the life they had built together from that dramatic beginning, both silently gave thanks for the storm that had started their journey and for the courage that had carried them through the flames to find a love that would last a lifetime.